Socialist Singers, thank you so much for joining us. Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Where can we find you Wednesdays at 7 p.m? St. Bride's Church on Catherine Street, 7 p.m. every Wednesday, yes? You can join in with that wonderful, wonderful singing. But not August, because they're on holiday, they need a break. Have we got more chairs? Okay. Right, well, without further ado, welcome everybody to Liverpool Central Library, welcome to Makefest, and welcome to our Ignite special, where we're going to be cantering across time and space with the help of a number of land enthusiasts who've made themselves known, who are going to help us understand more about what lies beneath us, the land. My name is Dr. Kirsty Styles, I have to say now. Operations half price. I am a journalist, a campaigner, a researcher and a performer, and I'm going to be looking after you for the next hour or so. Ignite, for the uninitiated, is a night that usually happens on Bold Street, where speakers get 5 minutes and 20 slides to tell you something that they think is really cool. You can hear about foster caring, the lifestyle influences of dementia, or about the person who designed the Elvis costumes, or just Elvis. So there's something for everyone, every single time. What more could you want? As a special thing for today, after everyone has spoken, we're going to get back together at the end for a Q&A. So if you aren't speaking, or even if you are, do think about the questions that you're going to want to ask people. So, we should get on with the show, yes? In a real pure power play, it looks like I'm up first. Talking about Britain's best kept secret. Who owns Britain in 300 seconds? So here we go. You'll be unsurprised to learn that part of the reason I became interested in the topic of land is because I went on a disappointing date dressed as a cat. The date was with a land rights campaigner, and as you quickly gathered, the date didn't quite work out, but what I did get was a book recommendation, Who Owns Britain, by Kevin Carhill, who also compiled the Sunday Times Rich List. It's a book about what he called Britain's best kept secrets, and shockingly, though this story doesn't actually start with an adult woman in 2025 dressed as a cat trying to snog land nerds, as so many stories do, it actually starts in earnest at the time of the Norman Conquest in 1066. For it was William the Conqueror, William the Bastard, the first French Norman King of England, who took over all of the land in this country when he invaded us. He removed any right to land ownership for women that the Anglo-Saxons had, and redistributed the most valuable treasure of this country, the land, to his pals. According to Philippa Gregory, in her book Normal Women in 2023, the top tier of landowners remains Norman today. 70% of the country is owned by just 10% of the people. The Normans also brought about the patriarchy and anti-Semitism by introducing a cash economy in which Christians were unable to lend money or to charge interest. This period also included the harrying of the North, a brutal war that took over the north of England, which hasn't stopped since. But one thing that did come about of this was the Domesday Book, a great survey of much of the land of England and parts of Wales, completed in just 20 years, and this is still used as evidence of title to land in this country today. That's because almost 2,000 years later, after the publication of Who Owns Britain in hardback, the government admitted in 2001 that the land registry do not even know the total acreage of England and Wales, and not unrelatedly, that they do not know who owns at least 1/3 of these two countries. Can you hear me? On this, Kevin Carhill warns us, if you do not know who owns your country, then you do not control your country. Since the Normans, one of the only relatively comprehensive assessments of land ownership in this country is called the Return of the Owners of Land, done in the 1870s and covering all 4 nations. It's called The Modern Doomsday because it was the first assessment of land done since that original Doomsday book. It was actually done to try to appease new voters, the people who were given voting rights under the Second Reform Act, but ultimately it exposed the aristocracy to show people who actually for the first time owned land in the UK. Interestingly, going far too fast here, while there was limited land agitation in England, the reason that we had the Irish person up there, was because in Ireland there was actually agitation for land reform, and land was redistributed over the course of about 200 years. And that is one of the reasons for the Irish miracle in the 1990s, where their GDP was much higher than ours, despite there being only 4 million people. What we do know, thanks to the work of Kevin Carhill, Guy Shrubsole and others, is that there are 60 million acres in this country. That's just about one for everybody, depending on where you want to live. But our 28 million dwellings exist on about 3 to 6 million acres. And most of those, about 60% are owned by the homeowners, but many of them are not owned by homeowners. They're shared ownership or buy-to-let. Meanwhile, rather whopping 40 million acres is owned by just 189,000 families. 189,000 families, 40 million acres, a rather handsome 55 football pitches each. The vast majority of these estates are owned by aristocrats who would have been peers in the House of Lords until 1999, baronets and also the residual land gentry. Most commoners pay council tax. That's people like us, billions of pounds a year. These families, in fact, gain money as subsidy from the government. So, average house prices in this country since 2000 have catapulted from £107,000 in 2000 to £330,000 in 2024. And that is because of what Kevin Carhill calls the land bank, where a building site now constitutes between half and 2/3 of a new house's cost, because of an apparent scarcity, but this resource is not scarce. It is also not only scarce, but also kept from dereliction by a huge public subsidy that I've already described. But perhaps even more shockingly, I'll leave you with this. The Crown is the only absolute owner of land in England and Wales. The Crown is the only absolute owner of England and land in this Wales. Freehold, leasehold, no, the Crown. Who owns Britain? Indeed. Wow, that was far too much, I apologise. I'm there. Oh my goodness me. I'll warn you that it's quite hard to focus with the drums outside, everybody, but we've got a pro here actually, Cath Holland, a pro Ignite person who's going to be great. With a drum beat. So I believe first up, this is very professional. Oh, is it actually going to be Cath Holland? Okay, you'll have seen her before if you've been to Ignite. She's here again. Cath, come on up.
You ready?
I'm indeed.
So this one is a little bit more relaxed than the others.
This is Mr. Gareth Bonello. His stage name is The Gentle Good. He made an album called Elan, which was released a few weeks ago. At the end of the pandemic, he went to live in the area around the Elan Valley in Wales. Now, the Elan Valley, the album essentially is a protest album about what happened to the Elan Valley. It was basically an area of it was flooded in 1904, and the reason it was flooded was to produce water for the people of Birmingham, because Birmingham was becoming increasingly industrialised during that time, so it needed fresh water. So the powers that be decided that they were going to flood the Elan Valley without any consent. The local people weren't asked any permission at all. 100 people were forced off their land. Most of them were tenant farmers, so basically they lost their livelihoods as well. And in a very disturbing twist, graves from families that had gone back years and years, they were dug up and the remains were buried elsewhere. And the reason Gareth wanted to make this album is because the flooding back in 1904 is out of any living memory. The only people who can tell the story now are descendants and also historians as well. The song Dog Peak is basically about the connection between the Welsh language and the Elan Valley itself. Before it was flooded, it was one of the it was a stronghold of the Welsh language. Most people spoke Welsh in the area. In contemporary times, it's one of the lowest places that speak Welsh, and that's a consequence of people moving away, and people no longer, just the language basically fading out in that area, and he amended a traditional folk song in order to keep that connection going. Now, Percy Shelley, back in the 1700s, the poet Percy Shelley, he wanted to buy a mansion house in the Elan Valley, but the owners of the house said no. And I tend to think of like Percy Shelley potentially being a holiday home, one of the original holiday home, potential holiday home owners back then. There's lots of graffiti around Wales protesting against land grabbing. The one Elan here, if you drove past that, you'd notice what it was and you look it up. Now the Trewyn was flooded in 1965 on the pretense that the water was going to supply Liverpool and Wirral. In fact, the water was taken and sold to sell to industry, so it's sold for profit basically. There's lots of effects of the Welsh land grabbing, especially in Elan. A lot of the workers that went to live there, to work there, to build the dams were either English or European, and they didn't speak Welsh. Therefore, there was no point in, they didn't need to learn Welsh because local people have moved away, so it was hugely problematic. And also, it demonstrated very much the lack of respect that the UK's got for Welsh and Welsh culture. A lot of the profits went out. I've got all the profits to do with the flooding went out. So all of it's to do with money, really, with no thought for the damaged landscapes, the broken communities. Stunning Location is a satire. It's a song on the album. It's a satire of the way people just go into rural Wales and fetishise the beautiful countryside. But it's very, when I was talking to Gareth, he was very keen to stress when it came to the flooding of Birmingham, for the people of Birmingham, he didn't blame the Birmingham people. It's very much a top-down approach. Lots of problems around second homes, English people going and buying homes. Young people can't get on the housing ladder, they can't have their families there. And there's lots of music around the issue of second homes. This is a lovely band called Kim Hon. Mr. English is the song they wrote about second homes. And that when they talk about it at gigs to English audiences, they do say, look, we've got hotels, you know, you can always come and stay. And this is a bit of a more biting song by the wonderful HMS Morris, who are from Cardiff. And it's a lot more sinister, but it does get the message across about the whole thing about holiday homes and second homes in Wales is a fetishisation of the countryside. Of course, Wales is not the only country that suffers from this. Scotland, and also recently in Cumbria, there's some common land in Cumbria that the MOD took over, just took and used as a firing range. And it wasn't just a few hundred yards, it was quite a vast space that they just took. Yeah, there was commemorations, like celebrations almost, in the form of exhibitions very recently, and to mark those 120 years, which is good to keep the memory alive, but also it feels like a little bit of a twist of the knife that it happened at all. And I'll just leave you with Gareth's comment, the voice of the ordinary people is taken away, and that is, he's talking there about the Welsh people and also Liverpool and Wirral and Birmingham people. It wasn't their choice to flood their valleys and that village, so it's important that it's very much a top-down approach is what I'm saying.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I've got a little game for you. Thank you very much, Cath. You mentioned the MOD. I've got the top 5 landowners in the UK. Anybody want to shout any guesses? MOD is number 3.
Church of England.
Church of England is not in the top 5. The Crown, including the duchies, is number 5, yes. Got the Forestry Commission as well. The top one, collectively, is 40,000 agricultural landlords, the people I was mentioning earlier. And the second one is actually yours collectively, but we don't sort of look at our estate in those terms. Thank you very much, Cath. We're going from Wales and Scotland to Eamonn, who's going to tell you what he's talking about. Welcome, Eamonn.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a bit sweaty, just come off my bike. So, anyway, this is Lough. It is sometimes described as the largest commons in Ireland, but it is definitely the largest lake in both Ireland and somehow the UK. So 40% of the waterways in the north of Ireland drain into the Lough, and it provides about the same amount, 40% of the region's drinking water. And while the Lough's surface may be a commons, the land and soil beneath it are certainly not. They're owned by this man, Nicholas Ashley Cooper, the 12th Earl of Shaftesbury, known professionally because, of course, as DJ Nick AC. In 2005, he, in quite dramatic circumstances, Google it, inherited a vast estate including the 6,000 acre home in Dorset and 96,000 acres of Lough, which was originally claimed by Sir Arthur Chichester, this guy, on his way to becoming England's Lord Deputy of Ireland in the 1600s, and then made its way through marriage to the Shaftesbury estate. And Sir Arthur himself here describing how he did that. He burned and destroyed along the lough, even within 4 miles of Dungannon, that's where I'm from, where we killed man, woman, child, horse, beast, and whatever we found. This is the next bit. DJ Nick here has, to be fair to him, said for a while that he would happily give up the lake at market value. And after some pressure, he has now said that he would transfer the lough into some form of collective ownership. We don't know when, what, or who that will be to, and he hasn't mentioned it since, so we'll see what happens. Lough, you might remember, hit the headlines in the summer of 2023 when it was hit by a catastrophic bloom of toxic blue-green algae, and lots of dogs, or there was deaths of swans, otters, dogs, sickness in humans, and that now happens every year. It is, however, only the most recent acceleration in the collapse of Lough Neagh's ecosystem. Once home to the largest eel fishery in Western Europe, the Lough's eel population collapsed suddenly by 90% in 1983 and hasn't recovered at all, is continuing down. Numbers of once plentiful migratory birds have fallen by more than 80% since the 1980s, and the clouds of humming midges that were a daily annoyance have all but disappeared in the last few years. This decline is thanks to a web of factors: pollution from agricultural runoff, intensive farming, almost complete deforestation of the surrounding countryside, invasive species of zebra mussels that filter the water and breed perfect conditions for blue-green algae, and the changing climate looms ominously. So all that sounds bad, but you might be thinking, what's that got to do with DJ Nick AC? He does dredge a bit of sand from the top corner of the lake, but that's nothing compared to all that stuff, right? But actually, you would have a point. But that argument sort of obscures some deeper impacts of Shaftesbury's ownership and ongoing systems of colonial power, of which they're a part, and their internalisation that continue to dominate relationships between humans, other than humans, and the land. Under colonial rule, Ireland's woods were cleared and intensive farming practices were enacted for extraction and profit, while land-connected knowledge systems, culture and language were erased and replaced. The extractive relationships enabled powers to externalise the consequences of its actions to colonise people and their land, making ecological sacrifice zones of their land, almost entirely located almost in the global south. This means that effective action against that must not only seek to change the names on the deed, but and making only superficial changes to the existing power relationships that are deeply entangled with ecological destruction. It means divesting from the modern world that colonialism created and maintains, and dismantling global systems of exploitation of people, of the land, of ourselves, and of the other than human, that necessitates sacrifice zones of varying extremes from Lough Neagh, and even here, even in this country, like the Elan Valley, and connects them to the colonial genocides and ecocides of our times, including DR Congo and Gaza. If we can see that it is the power relations of modernity is something to be unravelled, we can see the importance of counter-modern forms of resistance. This is just down the road from me in Arbo back home, and I had some more stuff on that, but let's just start by doing this. Cheers.
I know it's very tempting to try to cram as much in as you can. That was wonderful, thank you so much. Speaking of colonial powers, does anybody know who our local Earl is?
Derby.
Is the Earl of Stanley, yes. There's a Stanley pub, there's a Derby pub. Do you know where they live, where their home is?
No
Very
way.
good, yes, okay. There's no points, I'm afraid, but well done. So, thank you very much, Eamonn. I'm going to hand over now to Terry, who's going to call out for the green belt. Thank you very much.
So my talk's about the idea, right, why we should have the green belt and not give her up, and give a little bit of short history and tell where we're going to be going with this and where we are right now. So the idea is we started the green belt, times that's as perfect as this. We started the green belt in the 1930s when we had the idea that we were going to look after our green country because we had our towns and cities and we wanted to make sure that they were separate, and then that separate area was kept for many years. And in about 1947, it set up saying about the country planning, formalising this and making sure the idea of sprawling, which is not like the fall on the floor, it's more about the idea of saying that they don't encompass another town, and we kept this separate. So we set up and we had 16 major urban core protected areas of the UK, and this made sure that we had this sort of designated land that we looked after. For example, London, surprising fact we're going to jump off there, has 3 times its size in protected green belts. This gives the public access to the countryside, walking pathways and clean air spaces, and you'd be surprised as we go on later on how this green belt is many millions of hectares and is reducing all the time. So as you can see here, we've got 10,000 hectares lost each, almost over that 2-year period. And it's saying now, the government is trying to incentivise saying that we need to be having more houses. So the big issue of this, the reason for this talk is they're saying use the green belt when we've got many other areas that can be designated for this. One of the reasons the corporations are saying it because they want the green belt because it's right next to where people live. So it creates a commute, it's short to commute. So forget the environment, let's just have a nice easy commute. And one of my favourite saying, no one wants Birmingham on the sea. The idea of taking over this green land and having nothing but built up green concrete cities. The idea is nothing grows out of a concrete city. The big great debate is talking about is using this industrial land and saying to yourselves, well, it's disused, so let's use that land. But this grey land is being used it's been taken over by vegetation, and plants and animals use this space. Public opinion is we've got 2/3 of the UK who says, it's green, we want this green belt protected. But it seems to be there's a big issue at the moment because that's what the public wants. Hence the debate now, we have the politicians with the housing and the green debate and they're juggling up and trying to say it's stuck in the middle. But we know which way they're going towards as times are changing. David Cameron said, it was, the idea of it being a protected boundary, keep your hands off. The reason is at the moment, who pays the price for the green belt? And if you start cutting into this green belt, the shame is we won't get this back once we encroach into that space. And everyone thinks, oh, the green belt, it's huge. It's not. They call the green belt, they class golf courses as part of the green belt, and in farmland, industrial farmland is classed as part of the green belt, so it's not as vast as we think it really is. What we should be using is the brownfield sites. Disused towns have lots of space that could be recouped, broken and knocked down, rebuilt, and that would get us somewhere in these slides. I'm not following these, as you can see. 1.2 million houses could be recouped within space that's been already designated as disused, land. We need to get back to nature. We need to be able to reclaim this and protect what we've got, because once we've gone, it's gone. The protection we've got is as you can see the little picture there, we've got protection from floods with nature. We've got the safety net of droughts because of the trees and how that protects us. Once that safety net's gone, there's no bringing that back. We look at it and we say, well, who's protecting nature? Who's protecting our mental health, or getting out there, our clean energy, our clean air? Once this becomes a big issue, there's nothing happening. We are the only ones who can fight for this change. Both sides has a point. We need to, we've got a growing population. We need to look after that. And the other side said we need to look after the environment and the green air spaces, and that's great. But we can do this if we do the brownfield areas, if we work on the places that derelict that need changing. keep your trousers up. Keep the green belt, keep it on. Don't let it loose. Don't listen to what they say. Temptation as it is to take it off or reduce. Thank you.
Doesn't feel long, does it? 5 minutes. Right, we're quickly moving from the natural environment to the built environment. So I'm going to welcome Lucy to the stage. Thank you very much.
I didn't even know I was on now, so this is a bit of a shock, but anyway.
Hold on.
Okay, guys. I've made many mistakes over the past 12 months, but I'm only a human. And these mistakes are lessons. Lessons that I'd like to share with you all today on how I, at 24 years old, own some land. On how I, at 24 years old, have just bought my first house in Liverpool, all by myself. So, lesson number 1, guys, is now. Some people may say that to afford a house deposit, well, you should just stop buying your morning coffee every day. And guys, I've done some maths. So if you bought a £4 latte from Costa every single working day of the year, other brands are available, it costs you just over £1,000 a year. Average first-time buyer deposit in Liverpool is £18,500, so you'd have to save for 18 years just to afford it. But guys, just enjoy your coffee. Lesson number 2 is add on another 10% of your deposit value for annoying spends. And to be honest, this is something I was completely naive with, because tell me why. One freezer drawer is 40 quid, guys. Why is a fence panel 50 quid? And why is a carpet washer at least 100 quid? Because every single time I tap my bank card, I feel physical pain. Lesson number 3 is understand the current economic climate. So, economists are predicting that interest rates will continue to fall throughout the year, which will only benefit you by the time that you come to remortgage. So that means you are quids in. However, others are saying that inflation will continue to rise throughout the year, meaning everything will continue getting more expensive. For example, rises in the energy price cap, rises in council tax, and supply chain disruption, which forces up food prices. So knowing both of these things will help you ensure that you don't overstretch yourself, as unfortunately, one saving could be offset somewhere else. Lesson number 4, guys, is to expect rejection. I went to view a house which I absolutely fell in love with. Good price, good location, good everything. I put an offer in for the asking price and I'm like, yeah, I got this in the bag. Got rejected. Someone outbid me. I'm like, okay, I can offer another £1,000. Got outbid again. And again, and again, and again, until I was absolutely devastated and I had to admit defeat. If I was to keep going, I would have been bankrupting myself every month just to afford the mortgage. And I had to ask myself, well, yeah, I'd have this gorgeous house, but it'd be at the expense of my well-being, and it simply wasn't worth it. Lesson number 5, guys, is to budget, budget, budget. I like to, every single month without fail, sit down on my payday and work out what I'm spending for every single day. So 50% is going on my mortgage, my bills, etc., all my essentials. My 30%, that is my wants. So guys, if you want the brand new pair of 110s, go and get them. If you want to go out for some cocktails with the girls, then please do that. But your 20% is your emergency saving fund. This is where your washer breaks down, your boiler breaks down, etc. But it's also your freedom fund. So if you are dreaming of going around the world, if you want to get married, you want to have children, whatever, saving 20% of your income, give or take, roughly every month, will ensure that you are able to do that in the future. Lesson number 6, you own the land, guys. You have completely free reign over what you do with it. So gone are the days of having to worry about putting blue tack on the walls because it will piss off the landlord. Gone are the days of having to worry about a nice scented candle. So this is what I have done with my house, because it's my house and I can do what I want. It's essentially a ladder shelf full of different teddies, my university certificate, and basically different variations of Winnie the Pooh, but it's what I want to do. The final and most important lesson is to be proud of yourself. Guys, I've just achieved something that I'd never in a million years think would be possible, especially this time last year. And if I get too emotional, yeah, it's a very overwhelming experience. And I think it's a really testament to everybody in here can do something that you could never put your mind to this time last year. You're capable of anything that you put your mind to. And I'll leave you with that final sentiment. Read it to every aspect of your life. Anything you're struggling with right now is that you're capable of anything you put your mind to. Thank you very much.
One more time to make sure people were listening. Who ultimately owns the land?
The king.
The crown. Excellent. We've now got, on a similar theme, Kaya. Woo-hoo! I got fancy notes because I got a work iPad. So yeah, ready to go? Hi, I'm Kaya, and I'm going to do a little tale about how the leaseholder system is essentially feudalism, and the medieval system where essentially you lend land from the crown in exchange for military service or military protection, depending on where on the scale you are. And this is essentially the modern day peasant's guide to leasehold. So home ownership, always been like the thing that we're told to aspire to. But what if your castle has no sinking fund, managing agent that makes you wish it was sheriff of Nottingham, and this is our castle, the Cinnamon Buildings in Liverpool. Beautiful, modern view of the live birds, both cathedrals, the River Mersey and Albert Docks, well, until all the hotels came up around it, but it was nice the first couple of years. So, what is leasehold ownership? It's a form of property ownership where you own the property for a fixed period of time, while the land is owned by somebody else, which is your freeholder or your landlord. Essentially, you're buying the right to occupy the property for the duration of the lease, rather than owning it outright. Well, it's you and the bank, really. In our case, anyway. And a company in Doncaster, and a guy representing the freeholders' pension fund, who seems to always be on annual leave. And most flats in... we did it that way around. So, ownership of the property gets returned to the freeholder at the end of the lease. That might not be when you're alive, but essentially it's like Blockbuster and you just basically get fined if you don't return it. And most flats in England are leaseholds. Around 70% of all leasehold properties are flats. Just only a few houses that are flats. And I was really naive to this because you might have heard my accent, I'm Scouse-Norwegian. So I had a very Nordic naivety. We have a very different system. People own stuff and share responsibility. And owners do dugnad, which is when everybody come together and we all like rake the grass of the common areas together, or you can pay your way out of it. But it's very different, madness. We have Samleie, very different to Samleie, only Emilia will get that one. It's a co-ownership where each owner fully owns their own unit and shares responsibility for common areas. It's essentially a share of the freehold. And that's the most common. And then you got borettslag, this is my hometown. It means housing cooperative. And it means you own a share in the cooperative that gives you the right to live in a specific unit, but the corporate together owns the building. I thought I had bought a borettslag. It's resident-led, democratic housing cooperative designed for stability and affordability. Instead, I bought a ticket to the English feudal revival. So, you pay these service charges, which there are no cap on. They have to be reasonable, but the freeholders decide essentially what's reasonable. And the share of flats with a sub-£1,000 service charge has gone ridiculously down to under 20%. And it's kind of like the Irish giving away the potatoes to the English. And we said most flats are leasehold, right? Which means that this affects a lot of people. It's a time-limited private contract where your right is often secondary to a profit-seeking freeholder, more like renting with paperwork than ownership. And then came Grenfell. The system cracked completely open, because all of a sudden, people can't sell the flat and they can't afford to live there. You can't sell the flat because you can't get the building regulations. And especially in the north, because guess what? There are more people taking advantage of people up in north, and it's gone up to by 60, almost 61% in northeast, and not very far after in northwest.
And they're like ticket time bombs. We can essentially, we're living somewhere that can die. And what service do you get? This is literally from a couple of months ago in my building. This is the service we're getting. We're paying £8,000 a year. 1 year we were asked for £48,000. Right? I've had to take out a second mortgage to be able to afford the service charges in the place that it's our luxury living apartment block. So essentially, right to manage. We started to go for right to manage. It's been terrible, not been an easy ride. We've been revolting. I've been leading the process since 2022. They've been scaremongering me, threatening me that I will go to prison. They've been horrible in absolutely every way. We've had tribunal, but we take over tomorrow. I didn't expect to get so much. It's a new beginning. It's not the perfect solution. But we don't have all of Albert Dogs anymore, but we can still see a little bit of mercy. Thank you. That's me.
Now I can imagine, this is where people live, yeah? This is about homes, yeah? Safety, security. And now for something, I think, entirely different. We're going from the grand theme of land, we've been to nature, we've been into housing. Now Julian Tate is going to talk to us about standards. Final speaker. Thank you very much.
Hey!
All right. Oh my God, you don't
You're
hear me
on.
that loud. All right. Hello, everybody. So we've today been running Free Range Liverpool, where you go out and basically take back the city. There's some people coming back from their expedition later, which I hope you can stay around for with their expeditions. So standards, what it's all about, and actually it does relate to land. Trains. I took a train here today, not that particular train. Standards make the railways work. With standards, it allows you to see all the information. Modern life works based on standards. Things work on your phone, things work on the screens, on the platforms. But what we want to talk about is like who gets to decide what standards are. How are they determined? This is a spaceship. Mars lander, very, very, very expensive spaceship. But there was a problem with standards. When they launched the spaceship, some of the engineers used metric, some of the engineers used imperial. So when it came to land on Mars, it just decided to dive into the surface. And I'm sure Elan will find it when he gets there. And he's perfectly welcome to it. As we see, standards in measurement are all over the place. Some come from land, furlongs, yards, chains, and some are kind of metric. I mean, barleycorns. Has anybody used barleycorns these days? I mean, what are they? What are they? And why we need standards? Has anybody tried fixing their taps? I mean, it's not easy, is it? Finding a washer, finding a thing that'll fit onto your thing, that'll fit onto your tap. That's because there's a world of things aren't standardised. Pyramids. They were standardised. You cannot build a pyramid unless you get all your block makers who are making all their blocks to make blocks of the same size. But the reason why they could have those blocks in the same size is because of power. Because of somebody who was very, very powerful, who would kill you if you didn't do it, told people to make standards. This is a random picture of somebody very old. I don't know who it is. But talking about power, anybody tried to charge their phone and found they haven't got the right phone charger? That's because everybody's got different standards. You take your plug and you go on holiday and you find your plug doesn't fit in. Why? Standards and power. So the US decided to basically ensure that their part of the world all worked on one standard, whereas the colonial Europeans worked over on that side. And that's why you get all these different standards and way things work. This is made by Decca. Decca created a navigation system before GPS. They also made records. And it was a navigation system that you could pre-GPS, where you could actually navigate around the world. The Americans, they didn't like it. They thought, well, we've got our own standard. If the British use their system and it becomes adopted, that means they will own the system that allows navigation. So the Americans made sure that didn't work. That's power and standards. This is how you would get, it's not come out very well, from one side to another. There we go again, standards, railways. There's a standard gauge. And in fact, you can nearly get all the way to China from the UK using standard gauge. And the reason? Trade, money, commerce, or whatever. But where we see standards and railways and power all working out is in the Baltic regions. Baltic regions all used Russian gauges. And now they're starting to move up to European gauges because they don't want anything to do with Russia. Bombs. Standards. NATO uses one standard, Russia uses another. That's why some of the problems with arming Ukraine happen, because they use different weapons. There you go, standards again. Standards, power, how you inflict power. We're seeing this within technology. So there's a big fight between America and China about who gets to determine what the internet is like. How we get to name things, or how we get to determine things. We all need to be very aware of why things sometimes work the way they do, and who's decided what those standards are. Because if we not sure, or we let go of control of it, then we may end up in a future that is like this, rather than one which can benefit everybody. And this is really important with regards to land, because someone decided to measure things like that. Someone decided to plot the things the way they did, and we sometimes need to know why.